So in this lab, that is the first lab, identify compatibility issues for SQL migration. So before we start, we need SQL Server 2019 or a later version along with a sample database that is compatible with your specific SQL Server instance. And we have to download and install Azure Data Studio. If it's already installed, you have to make sure it is up to date, that you're using the most recent version, and an SQL user with read access to the source database. And to have to make sure that in the C lab files, we download the lab files. So let's make sure we have all the resources. Before we proceed, so we have to make sure that Visual Studio Code is updated and you have the download 2019 version of the Adventure Works file. So let's log into Azure. Temporary access pass. Okay, so we can see that this is downloaded and it's in the download folders. And we also have to make sure that Visual Studio Code is up to date. This one. Make sure it should be placed in the C drive of the lab files. So we have the C drive over here. Let's please create a new folder called lab files, and we are going to place this over here. Okay, so we also have the Visual Studio which is up to date. Now let's select, or let's, the very first thing that we will do after updating, having all the prerequisites met, is restore a SQL Server database and run a command. So so let's open Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. So the name of the server, connect to server, it's already populated, right? We just have to select connect, and here we will select the databases, and we have the options over here. Select the database folder right here, and let's open a query tab, new query, and I'm going to just paste this query, tsql transact SQL query, to make sure the database backup file name and path match your actual backup file, right? It should be in the C folder. You have to give the folder name, right? So let me just open a notepad. And we will replace it with lab files. Again here also, in the entire query wherever there is a path. Now we are going to copy this and paste it over here, and we have to execute this query so that it restores the database. Okay, and it should see this, you will see this successful query executed successfully, right? And you have to make sure that this adventure work backup files is present in your database, files are present in your, the backup files are present in your SQL Server machine before running the TSQL command, right? So once it is successfully executed, now we are going to do some modifications. Okay, like we are going to alter the table sales LT customer, and next variable character, which is having a limit 5. Okay, so that's our query executed. So it says we do not have the permissions. Adventure works database. This is a backup file. Let me check whether, and you will see the query succeeds, complete successfully. Okay. Now we'll proceed with the, we have installed the Azure migration in extension, and now let's go back to Azure Data Studio, connections, new connections, and here we are going to type the server name, which is learn lon-sql1, and we are going to select the encrypt option as optional and connect. Once it is connected, you will be able to see the database like this. Like, now to launch the SQL, the Azure migration extension, you have to simply click on the source name, and we'll just select manage. That's our database. Now here Now here we are going to select the SQL migration. This will take you to the main page of the SQL migration extension. And this completes our task number 1. Now we are going to run the compatibility assessment. The compatibility assessment helps identify potential migration issues and provides detailed guidance on how to resolve them before the migration process begins. This can save significant time and resources. You will run the Azure migration extension for Azure Data Studio, run the compatibility assessment, and then view the results for Azure SQL Database Target. Now you have this option, migrate to Azure SQL. This wizard is going to open. Databases for assessment, right? You have to make sure that you select no. Do you want to track the migration process? You don't. Then you have to select the source infrastructure type as okay, this is also set to no. Is your SQL Server instance tracked in Azure? Do you want to track this? Is make sure we have keeping as no, and we have to select the database. Now let's click on next. Assessment summary and SKU remediations. Okay, so you have to wait for the assessment to complete, and then we are going to select next. Now we have to review the assessment results over here. Okay, like here you will see we have given some recommendations for Azure SQL targets. So now choose target platform, view assessment results, and here we can select Azure SQL database or whether you want to target it to Azure managed instance or SQL server on virtual machine, right? So if we select SQL database, you can see that it's not ready for migrating to Azure SQL database. If we select managed instance, what it says, ready to migrate it to the Azure managed instance. This means the next column can be safely used on Azure SQL managed instance. You can save the target over here, and you can make sure that in which resource group subscription that you are going to deploy. Okay, so those things you are going to target it over here. Here, save assessment report first. I'm going to save it to this over here. So my assessment report will be saved in a JSON format. Let's view this JSON report. And you can see it's a file, the JSON file and its properties, the server name, okay, and when the SQL managed instance is created, what will be the properties of that. Over here we are creating a SQL managed instance, so here we can see total number of database is 1. Recommendation status is ready, right? So this completes our task number 3, review the assessment results. Now we have to fix the issue, and we are going to run this command over here. Oh, execute the query. This query needs to be executed on the AdventureWorks database. Now let's go back to over here and let's go to the step 2. Right here we will refresh assessment, and next page we are going to select SQL database. Now it says that it's ready. The database is ready to migrate to Azure SQL database. So this completes our lab number 1, which is identifying compatibility issues for SQL migration.